Okay, welcome everyone. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the latest episode of What's New. I'm Priya Bhathija. For those of you that don't know me, I am founder and CEO of New Health. And for those of you that aren't familiar with New Health, we are a company created to increase access to health and healthcare for women and do that in a number of ways. One of which is through this What's New series, where we bring together women to talk about issues that are impacting their health. We've featured topics like sexual health, breast and gynecological cancers, menopause, and medical gaslighting in the past. And today we're here to talk about hair health. And I am pleased to be joined by Anjana Sreedhar, who is the author of Healthcare of 1,000 Slights, Connecting Legacy to Access in Healthcare, and Melissa Anzelone, who is the Senior Director of Training Professional at Nutrafol. I'm really excited for the conversation that they will have. I had the opportunity to sit on a panel with Melissa in New York, and she shared some really great information about hormones and hair health and how they use science to develop solutions that can help all of us as women. And I don't know about all of you, but my hair is beginning to thin in my mid-40s. And so this is a topic that's really important to me, and I hope you will enjoy the conversation. And with that, I will hand it over to Anjana.
Thank you so much, Priya, for that kind introduction. And I'm really excited to be speaking with Melissa today on all things hair health. I think all of the women in my life, regardless of what stage of life they're in, are thinking about hair and talking about hair. So this conversation could not be more timely. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us today. And before we start talking about hair itself, would love to hear a little bit from you about your background and what drew you to Nutrafol and your interest in working in hair health.
Yeah, it's a great question. Priya, thank you. And thank you, Anjana, for hosting us tonight. I'm really excited to be here. So my background is in naturopathic medicine. So I kind of took an alternative route when I decided to go to professional school. I wanted to focus more on natural therapies and really getting to the root cause of different diseases. So that's what I've been doing now for 13 years. That sounds like a long time. It was like just yesterday that I was graduating, but that is a lie. So, just going into that sort of background, I did patient care for a little bit, about 5 years, and then I found a wonderful company called Nutrafol. And really the focus of Nutrafol is to support hair, right? We kind of focus on this multi-targeted approach to hair thinning, which was super appealing to me 7 years ago when I joined, because it really kind of mirrored the training I had, right? It really looked at the root cause. It targeted a bunch of different things and really focused on that natural approach, which was exactly what I was looking for.
That's great. And I think it's, for a lot of us, it might be the first time we're hearing about naturopathic medicine. So it's really exciting that that's the career path you decided to take and that you found a company that aligned with your values and the training that you've received. So that being said, I think a lot of us are curious to hear, based on your experience, what are some of the common hair thinning concerns you've heard from customers or patients in the past, whether it's postpartum or menopause or any life stage in between?
Yeah, so we definitely hear a lot. We're actually really proud that we're up to at least 1 million people that we've helped. That was a stat that we got probably about 6 months ago. So
That's
I think,
amazing.
yeah, I mean, it's really exciting. I think, when I first started 7 years ago, we had a much smaller base, because we do have the consumer part of our business, right? You can go to our website, buy Nutrafol, or you can do it through your doctor, right? So that's the kind of side of the business that I work on, is supporting our healthcare providers and really focusing on educating them, right? And the way I do that directly is through our sales team, right? We have a great sales team of about 30 people who really go and do that boots on the ground work, right? Talk to the doctors, educate them, and then I'm the trainer. So I help them to break down the science. I onboard them, really help them to understand, everything that goes on. And I think the beauty of what we do is we can really empower people, right? I think especially for women, right? Our hair is everything. I can say that for myself anyway. My hair is everything. So it's the first thing we see, right? It's the first thing other people see. For me, it's a sign of my femininity. So it's a really big part of my identity. So I think when we start thinning, right, regardless of where we are in our life, right, if we just had a baby and we're starting to see that thinning right here, right, this is that very cortisol sensitive area, that postpartum, you're going to see that 300% increase in cortisol right after you give birth, right? You've just went through this physically traumatic experience and now you're in charge of a new human, right? So definitely some things that can cause an increase in our stress hormone. And then kind of later on in life, right, we're going to see that decrease in estrogen, right, that naturally happens even as early as 35. And we're going to see that decrease in progesterone. And then we're going to see that relative androgen dominance, right? Like it's not so much that we get more testosterone as we age, just relative to the other hormones, the testosterone looks high, right? Because estrogen's low, progesterone's low. So then as women, we're going to get patterns that look a little male, right? So we're going to see recession here. We're going to see a wider part on the top because that relative androgen dominance, right, that higher quote unquote level of testosterone is kind of unchaperoned, right? I kind of think of testosterone as maybe this toddler on the playground that doesn't want to listen, right? Maybe they're throwing things at other kids, right? Maybe they're running onto the swing and jumping off, right? Just very dangerously. Where when the estrogen and progesterone are there, they're kind of like these chaperones to testosterone. So without them, testosterone does whatever it wants, just like that unruly toddler that I'm describing. What it loves to do is become DHT. DHT, totally fine. That's what gives us our libido, right? Does a lot of other positive things. But when we become sensitive to it, especially peri-post-menopause, in the light of metabolic issues, right, stress, this DHT is going to bind to our hair follicles and cause them to shrink. Where does it like to go first? Here and here. So you're going to see that almost kind of male pattern look in our peri-post-menopause woman, something most women do not want. So I think it's really important to your point, kind of understand those patterns, right? Even visualize them and say, okay, how can we support from a product point of view? And then two, how can we support from a mental, emotional point of view, right? Losing your hair is crazy stressful and will probably cause more hair thinning, right? If you are stressed. So I think that's a big component of it too. Definitely on our consumer side and 100% on our professional side.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that detailed explanation. I appreciate that you really articulated nicely how important hair is to women because it doesn't just affect how we perceive ourselves or how others perceive us, but it also affects our own identity and how we think about ourselves, which is really important. And I'm definitely going to file away that description of testosterone as an unruly toddler inside women. I think that's a really helpful way to think about what's happening hormonally. So you mentioned, and I also mentioned in my question, postpartum and menopause as sometimes in a woman's life when she might experience hair thinning. But hair thinning may happen at other points in a woman's life too, whether they're going through something really stressful, whether it's a death in the family or loss of a job or something like that. And also hair thinning might happen because of environmental factors, exposure to pollution and things like that. So could you talk a little bit about how those other factors outside of hormonal factors might impact hair thinning as well?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question because it really ties to our philosophy that hair thinning is multifactorial, right? So we look at hormones, stress, metabolism, nutrition, aging, and hormones, right? So we're all encompassing. It's about 6 things, right, that are thinning our hair. So stress, super, super common, right? We're all gonna experience that at some time. If we haven't, maybe 5 or 6 times already. So with that stress, right, to your point, loss of a job, just something that's irritating us at work, certain email, maybe the way someone is treating us at work or personal life, we're going to see that increase in cortisol, right? Our stress hormone. That's going to push our hair from a growth state to a shed state. So with that shedding, you're going to see it in just massive amounts. They say that it's normal to shed like 80 to 100 hairs a day. So seems like a lot, but anything above that 100, you might see those clumps in the shower, right? I call them those little like hair spiders, right? That come together and try to kick over to the side or stick on the wall and just scare your family. And those, massive amounts of hair that we see in the drain on our pillow are that direct result of that increase in cortisol and that kind of push into that shedding stage of the hair cycle. And I think environment is so key, right? There's so many toxins in our everyday life. I think especially as women, right? Because the goal is to kind of suppress all the bodily functions all the time. So whether it's deodorant, right? Whether it is focusing on smelling a certain way, not smelling a certain way, I think having a skin texture, tone, look of some kind, right? I've got deodorant and makeup on right now, and that's great. But I think those components can cause what they consider lipid peroxidation, right? So any toxins are going to come into the body and damage your cells a little bit. Thankfully, if you have a lot of antioxidants in your life, in your body, not going to really harm you too much. But if you live in America, especially the tri-state area, you're probably going to be a little overloaded with toxins. So we're going to see environmental impacts that can even damage the cells that create the hair. Thankfully, in Nutrafol, we have ingredients that help to combat that and focus on really protecting those cells.
Great. That's actually a really nice transition into my next question, which is about the how, right? How does Nutrafol formulate products for customers that are experiencing hair thinning for like all the variety of reasons that we've just described?
Yeah, I love that because looking at Nutrafol's core formulations, right, our hair growth nutraceuticals, we're focusing on gender and then we're focusing on age and lifestyle. So for our men, we just have one product, so it's really simple. That one has more of our saw palmetto, because that's going to focus on more of that DHT kind of harm because men make more testosterone, they're more likely to make DHT. Same thing goes for postmenopausal women, right? As we get that decrease in estrogen and progesterone, we're going to see that relative androgen dominance. We're going to see the creation of more DHT. So technically, as you start to lose estrogen and progesterone on the inside, you become a little more male physiologically, right? Because now we have excessive amounts of DHT that's doing the same thing to our hair as if we were physiologically male. So in our women's balance, which is for ages 45 and older, we have more saw palmetto. We have maca, which is going to help to balance our sex hormones. And then we have probably the most difficult ingredient to pronounce in any of our products. It's called Anzelone. It is a really powerful antioxidant. So not only are we going to support the healthy hair growth cycle, but we can actually alleviate menopausal symptoms too. So that's
so that's like a double win there. Not only are you taking care of hair issues, but you're also taking care of menopause issues at the same time.
100%, because they're so connected. Like the hair loves estrogen, loves progesterone. Like if you've experienced it or anyone you know, pregnancy hair is the best hair because you have massive amounts of both of those hormones. When they go away, that's when we see shedding, right? Decrease in quality of the hair. And kind of with that, we want to make sure our women in that age group are really supported hormonally. Then we have our vegan formula. So our women's vegan is really focusing on women 18 to 44 with a plant-based lifestyle. This formula has smaller capsules, so that's a win. If you're not vegan and you want smaller capsules than our other products, this is your product. We also have this option as something that's biotin-free. So that's great too if you don't like biotin, if you're sensitive to it. Then we have our regular women's. This is for women 18 to 44. That is kind of it about that formula. And then we have our postpartum, right? So this is a breastfeeding friendly formula that is great for mom postpartum focusing on hormones, focusing on stress, and then really just giving mom back nutrition, right? Whether she's growing a baby or she's breastfeeding the baby, none of that nutrition is going to her. So we're making sure we're giving her all those good vitamins, minerals, plant extracts to make sure she's just set again.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear how much thought Nutrafol has put into each type of customer. It's not just about age or stage in life, but it's also about lifestyle preferences and other things that, women like to control about their lives, like being vegan or, being sensitive to a particular mineral like biotin, as you said. So it's really nice that you've, in this process of hair thinning, where sometimes it feels like agency or empowerment is being taken away from you, you can actually empower yourself by picking the product that works best for you.
100%. I think you said that so well.
Wonderful. So I think you kind of outlined a lot of the clinical nature of Nutrafol's products and how it supports women experiencing hair thinning at different points in their lives, and men as well. And would love to hear a little bit more about the history of research on women's hair thinning. I think something that New Health has done really well and other women's health organizations have really documented is the lack of investment in research in women's health outside of maybe obstetrics and gynecology, right? But now we're talking about women's health as it relates to hair. So what does the history of that look like, and how has Nutrafol been able to contribute to that through clinical testing?
Yeah, I really love that question. And I think that looking at things historically, right, women's research, women's health has always come second, of course. Did a little search before I jumped on here. I think they just started studying women's hair in the 90s.
Wow.
So, yeah. So
women have had hair for a lot longer than that. So
I was just going to say that. I was going to say, we've been, probably, the ones who lead that charge, just because our hair is longer, right? We are the ones we're marketed to more because there's probably a lot more you could do, right? If your hair is longer. Yeah. So we've had hair for a long time. 100% agree. And I think that, moving that focus away from androgenic alopecia, right, which is a male-centered disease, male pattern baldness, realizing that women can have the same exact pattern because the hormones become exactly the same as we get closer to menopause, I think is really interesting, definitely empowering. And then for us, we really take things, I think, to the next level because unlike drugs, right, supplements aren't really required to do much, right? Just don't really harm anybody overall after your product is out, and then be as transparent as you can. And those are kind of the only rules. With us, we go above and beyond. We've actually authored 23 different publications on hair health and wellness. 19 of those are clinical studies, and then 2 of them are randomized controlled trials. So really that gold standard, even in the pharmaceutical world. So we've invested so heavily in clinical studies and clinical research because we just believe in the science, right? Especially if we are having doctors, right, as our consumers, they want to know it works, right? They want to see that proof. I want to see that proof, right? When I'm looking into a product and researching it, I want to know, it's going to help my patients, right? And to support my goal, right, of getting that hair visibly thicker, fuller, stronger, decreasing menopausal symptoms, right? I want to know all those stats. And I think it really lends to our credibility, right, as a company, because there are no requirements for this. We just go above and beyond and, invest a lot of time, energy, and money into that. I think our clinical results are just amazing. Like, for example, with our women's vegan, when we studied that for 6 months, we saw 100% of users see an improvement in hair strength, and 100% of users see more scalp coverage. These stats are really phenomenal. Our other clinical studies have equally good stats, like say our women's, about 86% of people saw an improvement in their hair health. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, the vegan is the best one, right? Because 100% of people saw a change there. And I always like to give a little background, a little context there. I wouldn't say the vegan is the best formula per se. It's more so that people who lead a plant-based lifestyle can get a lot of nutritional gaps, right? I can say this because I did it. You can be vegan and have a Twinkie and Diet Coke, right? And that
Right.
is 100% vegan, but is it getting you anywhere close to your macros, right? All your macronutrient needs for the day? No. I did it and I feel like that was not a good fit for me. I got super tired, started seeing my hair shedding. So really that stat of 100% of people saw improvement. It's more so that on average, that cohort of people, right? That group of people needs us.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful to kind of hear about how you all are going above and beyond. I think firstly, it speaks to the supplement industry that it's really not very well regulated in the United States, which is very ironic considering that it has become such a core part for a lot of people's health. But it's nice to hear that you all are doing the research, investing in the science, going above and beyond in terms of clinical testing and delivering results. And it really speaks to how much you all are invested in the issue of women's hair health, which is really important. I think, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to agree with you 100%. I think, that's the majority of our customer base, right? That's kind of who, really reaches out to us, is proactive, right, about finding solutions. And then, like I kind of said before, hair is so important to women, right? So
Right.
important to me, that's for sure, right? Spent a lot of money on this, just getting it perfect or as close to it. So yeah, I think when we start to see those changes, right, it really can impact us, right, mentally, emotionally, physically. So I think, providing a solution that includes these natural vitamins, minerals, and extracts that only has side benefits can't get any better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I really appreciated your example about, being vegan and having a Twinkie and Coke, and that's still technically being considered vegan, but that's not necessarily healthy. That's not necessarily going to support your body and your hair in the way that it needs to, which leads me to my next question about preparation, especially when thinking about menopause. So I think for a lot of women who are younger, and I'm going to include myself in this, we don't necessarily think about menopause as a life stage at all. We're sort of, 20 years down the line, it's 25 years down the line. I'm not going to worry about it right now. And then obviously for women who are experiencing menopause or who are perimenopausal, it takes over so much of their life in terms of managing symptoms, managing effects and things like that. So I wanted to get your perspective on what younger women can do to be better prepared to manage perimenopause when they get to that stage in their lives.
Yeah, I love that question. And I mean, at 41, I'm still in denial that does exist. Probably start to see a decline in my own estrogen, but yeah, just going to deny that. But yeah, I love that question because I feel like the more you can do when you're young, the more you can do just in general, the less likely you're going to see those symptoms be severe, right? By the time you get to that decline in estrogen, that's significant. So I think overall, kind of looking at the body holistically, exercise is probably my number one recommendation, right? Just getting all of that lean muscle in your body. That's going to stimulate your metabolism. That's going to keep your hormones healthy. That's going to really help to balance your blood sugar, right? Which is so key for longevity. And just like everything, right? Doing it in moderation, right? I have patients who exercise 7 days a week really intensely, right? That can kind of go the other way. So, doing at least 3 days a week of something you enjoy, right? If you have to kind of drag yourself to exercise, your stress hormones probably already up. So I'd probably say that first. And then just getting the nutrition you need, right? I think as someone who lived through the 90s, right, where all the messages in the media were, to be skinny, you have to eat nothing. That's the worst message you could possibly give a woman because all of our hormones are cholesterol-based, fat-based. So making sure that, we get all of our macronutrients almost every day, right? We're not skipping meals because that's going to increase stress hormone and just make our bodies cranky. So that nutrition piece is so key. The thing that no one wants to talk about, which is stress, right? Making sure stress hormone is as level as it can get. Living in the tri-state, that may not be reasonable. So taking things like Nutrafol, we're going to have a stress component in ashwagandha that's physically going to help lower that cortisol. So if you are in New York, right, you cannot escape the noise, the pollution, things like that, but you can counter that elevated stress hormone with plant extracts. So I'd say that's kind of the trifecta. Anything we can do to do that daily, right? Have a practice where we're tracking our macronutrients, getting that regular exercise, managing stress, that's going to be huge. Once we get to that hormone decline, you're not going to see those dramatic symptoms. I know when my mom went through menopause because she was crazy healthy, she maybe had like one hot flash and she was done. Okay.
Wow.
I'm taking notes here. Remember what she's doing because she's doing a lot of things right.
Yeah. No, that's great. And it's funny how frequently we hear about, exercise and eating right, and how we hear about that as advice for so many different things, like how to avoid certain chronic conditions and now how to avoid very severe menopausal symptoms. But it really seems like the key to a really healthy life in the long term too, especially in terms of hair health, which is our topic for today. So something else that I wanted to ask you about was just thinking about hormonal healthcare throughout our lives, because obviously our hormone levels spike and decline during pregnancy, postpartum, probably during the onset of puberty, and then menopause. But are there other points in our lives when our hormones may be increasing or declining that we need to be thinking about? And how do we connect the dots across those different stages of life?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the fluctuations that were described already can, happen over longer periods of time, right? I think about the shortest hormone fluctuation, right, which is kind of our menstrual cycle, that we see those huge impacts, right? So at ovulation, right, we've got estrogen, progesterone at the highest. The hair is loving life, right, because it loves estrogen and progesterone. And then, once ovulation is over, we get into the luteal phase, right, quote unquote PMS. That's when estrogen is the lowest. That's when we are the crankiest. And so is our hair, right? A lot of people can see just texture changes, even in that short period, right? In that week and a half that we're in that luteal phase. And then we see that increase, right, in the follicular phase. Hair starts to get a little happier, right? Maybe it styles even a little bit better because it just loves that estrogen, just soaks it up and whenever it can. So I think, those fluctuations can happen. And then even, looking to something very connected to our hair, which is our skin, right? We can even see those hormonal changes impact our skin health, right? Whether it's breakouts here along the jawline, right? That's super DHT driven, testosterone driven, or facial hair, right? If you trend towards more of an androgen dominant kind of situation like PCOS. So I think even, in those situations, having all the things we talked about, right? Having all the natural vitamins, minerals, and plant extracts that are in Nutrafol can really help to balance that process and really keep the hair as happy as possible, because that is the goal here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you talking about the hormonal cycle, not just across the entirety of a woman's lifetime, but also just every month in terms of menstruation for as long as that menstruating period lasts. So it's helpful to think about how quickly hormones change over time, whether it's longitudinal or within the course of a couple of weeks. So thanks for your perspective on that. I want to make sure that we get to question and answer, but before we get to that point, wanted to ask one last question of you, which is what gives you hope in women's healthcare? I think you've already started to speak a lot about how Nutrafol has really been the leader in clinical testing and investigating hair thinning among women. But what are some other things that give you hope as far as women's healthcare goes?
Well, I would definitely say you ladies, people who are speaking about this, right, providing a platform like Priya is, and, having these conversations. I think that, regardless of where we are in our life, it's just so important to empower these ideas, right, and our thoughts and ultimately ourselves. So I think that real human aspect to it really gives me hope, because a lot of people are just so passionate about talking about these issues, right? Taking away that secrecy, right, or shame that may be attached to them, and just diving in, finding solutions. So yeah, I'm going to credit you guys for sure.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I think those are all of the questions that we have for you, formally speaking. So now we want to open it up to our attendees to answer questions. Feel free to throw them in the chat. And while folks are doing that, I just wanted to start out by sharing one question from Shannon, which is about in which she asks, how does thyroid also impact hair and shedding? And I think that's a really good question, because I think we have to think about, when we talk about hair health, that doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? Women may be experiencing other conditions, symptoms of just life or disease as they're continuing to live their lives. So would be really helpful if you're able to answer the question of how thyroid issues may impact hair and shedding.
Yeah, I love that question, Jenna. Thank you for asking. So I think there are kind of two buzzwords, right, that get a bad rap: thyroid health and then metabolism. So I think taking a step back for a second and really kind of understanding that purpose of the thyroid, I think of the thyroid as like the thermostat in the house, right? It's either going to be turned up or it's going to be turned down based on the amount of heat or AC. We'll say AC because it's so hot outside. So we turn up, the AC, we get nice and cold, we feel good. Sometimes that thermostat gets stuck. Super, super common for that to happen. Things that can get it stuck are not hitting those macros, gut health, stress, other hormones, right? Like our blood sugar and how that's impacting our other hormones like our thyroid. So I think it's really requires this kind of like holistic view to get that thermostat back on track, right? So we're not either boiling or freezing, because that is really going to regulate our metabolism. And with our metabolism, that's really how fast or slow our body is breaking down food for energy. Mm-hmm. So super common to have hypothyroidism, right? So in this analogy, thermostat is stuck all the way down, right? It's just not producing enough of this air conditioning, right? Or this energy to power our body. Making hair is a super, super highly dependent process on this energy. So thyroid function is low, right? You're hypothyroid, you're not making enough energy. The body is definitely not going to give what energy that you are making to your hair. It sees the hair as like bottom of the priority list. It's going to take the energy you're making, it's going to put it in your heart, it's going to put it into your brain, right? All these are really essential parts of your body. So kind of with that, your hair will become brittle, weak, dry, because you're just not getting enough energy to produce the hair. So kind of looking at all those factors that I described, really helpful to support thyroid health. We do have 2 ingredients, Nutrafol, that does support kind of that overall thyroid health, selenium and iodine. A lot of times we're unable to make that thyroid hormone because we don't have those nutrients. There may be other opinions about that. Some doctors believe that supplementing with iodine is not helpful in supporting your metabolism and your thyroid, but we believe it's like a key nutrient to make that hormone to get more energy. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's, again, the analogy is really helpful, thinking about your thyroid as sort of being between heat and air conditioning, and what are the conditions that allow for it to actually create the energy that you need to power your body, as you were saying.
Oh yeah. And now in this heat wave that we have here, right, we want to turn that thermostat all the way up, but sometimes, that's not able to be supported, right? That's where burnouts come from, or blackouts.
Right. Absolutely. We have another question, which is, what doctor should you talk to about your hair health? And I think this is a really good question, because it's really hard to tell who to start with. I think some people may think their primary care is the right way to go, or your OBGYN, or maybe your dermatologist. But who should you really talk to if you're a woman who's suffering from hair thinning or hair loss? Who should you talk to medically about this? And who do you normally work with?
Yeah, so definitely our number one partner, our dermatologist. We actually got a claim a few years ago that we're the number one dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand. So we're very proud of that. So yeah, definitely be our dermatology partners. They are very versed in how the hair growth cycle works, right? All these different patterns that I described, they're able to diagnose you, if you do have some sort of hair condition. And we do have a section on our website where you can actually find a partner, nutrafol.com/partners. So that's a great resource to kind of look in your location, right? See who's around. And then if you want to, you can get some Nutrafol there too.
Great. I think that's going to be really helpful for a lot of people. And then another question I wanted to ask you was concerning how long women normally stay on supplements like Nutrafol. I know you outlined a couple of different products that help women at different stages in their life, but what is the recommended sort of length of time that you can stay on any of these, or is it sort of you can stay on it forever?
Yeah, I love that question. So we want to just focus on kind of this window, this 3 to 6 month window. So that's really what our clinical studies showed, that by taking our Nutrafol hair growth nutraceuticals, that's kind of like the minimum amount of time you would need to see a change. This is because hair can grow for even up to 2 years. So that kind of window of change is a little bit longer. We've studied our product, especially our Women's Balance, up to a year and just seen these additive effects, right? Just going to get better and better. And then, anecdotally, we've had people on our product since we started back in 2015. So I think, at least from what we see, there doesn't seem to be any harm in, continuing to take these vitamins, minerals, and plant extracts. And from our studies, it seems like these benefits are just additive.
Perfect. Great. We have a couple of really nice questions in the chat, so I'm going to share those with you as well, Melissa. So one of them is, are there people who don't tolerate Nutrafol well or have had sort of negative side effects as a result of taking it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are some people who are sensitive to biotin. Sometimes biotin can cause like breakouts, like whiteheads, blackheads. So because of that, in our understanding, we created our vegan formula to be a biotin-free option. So that's something we kind of learned, through developing product. We recommend that you take the product with food, especially something that has a little fat in it. It is a 4-capsule serving, which on an empty stomach can cause some acid reflux, right? Some indigestion. So those are probably the 2 most common things that we see.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's a good reminder that, any supplement that you take, you kind of really need to read what conditions you need to take it in order for it to actually have the desired result.
Exactly.
Yeah. Another question kind of related to the one I asked earlier about, what is the typical time frame that women typically take Nutrafol products? So another question for you is, what are the considerations for women taking Nutrafol long term? Can they take breaks in use, or are there any specific drawbacks of long-term use?
Yeah, I love that question. So thinking about our clinical studies, the product that we've studied the longest is our Women's Balance. So we've seen up to a year, just kind of additive benefits, right? So the benefits just kind of compound. So people see, stronger hair, longer hair, a decrease in their menopausal symptoms, and those just seem to continue as you take the product and even get better. So I can speak to that. And then anecdotally, we've had people who have been on it, continually for years, myself included. So, I think there's only benefits, I think, to using the product long term. At least I can speak to my personal experience for sure. It's about 7 years of Nutrafol right here. So I'm definitely happy on my end. And then I think too, we kind of liken taking Nutrafol to like going to the gym, right? You're going to go, right? Maybe you do your workout, you're starting to see some definition in your body. If you stop, it's not the worst thing, right? If you stop for months, you're probably going to see, whatever kind of non-shape you had, right? Kind of go back to what you had previously. So same thing with taking Nutrafol, right? If you stop it a couple days, couple weeks, you probably won't make that much of an impact. But really, for best use, we suggest that continuous daily consumption.
Great. And it's an important reminder to set that, Google Calendar notification or whatever you need to remind yourself to take something like that every day. So that's a great response. We have another really good question in the chat, which is sort of, and you started to speak to this a little bit, which is the difference between taking Nutrafol versus taking biotin and other sort of similar supplements. I know you mentioned some people may prefer Nutrafol because they have sensitivities toward biotin, or you have a line, a particular product for people who are sensitive to biotin. But what would you say are some of the key differences between Nutrafol and then taking biotin and a combination of other supplements?
Yeah, I love that question too. I think with Nutrafol products, we're going to target those 6 root causes of hair thinning, right? So stress, nutrition, environment, metabolism, hormones, and aging. So we're very comprehensive in our approach. And I think that's why we're so successful. With things like biotin or other hair, skin, and nail vitamins, they're just focusing on nutrition. So they're kind of missing out on those 5 other key root causes. So are you going to see a result? Yeah, you'll probably see something. Biotin is a B vitamin that helps us get more energy to make more hair. It isn't necessarily hair specific. And for us, it's really kind of that mono target where, you're not going to impact stress, you're not going to impact hormones, which, are 2 leading causes for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for making that difference so clear. One other question, speaking of biotin, is somebody asks, what is the connection between biotin and fertility treatments? There's been some news that perhaps biotin might impact a woman undergoing fertility treatment. So would love to hear you speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great question. So with biotin, I don't know if any of our attendees have seen any of the literature. We actually wrote an entire paper on this, how biotin has the ability to impact blood work. And what you're going to see is if you're taking, a certain amount of biotin, that biotin can either cause false positives or false negatives in blood work. It can definitely impact the outcome of thyroid hormone, some cardiac markers, and even some sex hormones. So that would be the first thing that comes to mind. If you are monitoring hormones of any kind, just be aware of that impact of biotin. Most people do start and stop supplements right around procedures and blood work. With Nutrafol, our recommendation at the dosage that we have in the product is 8 hours. So by 8 hours, the amount of Nutrafol will be cleared from the system. So that's my kind of first thought about that. I think overall, biotin is actually made endogenously. So you're going to make a lot of biotin in your own gut. So I'm not 100% sure of the connection between that and fertility. I would think that if anything, the biotin would mask potentially, right? If you're taking it and you get your blood work done, what the actual hormone levels are, because we make biotin in our bodies every day.
Mm-hmm. I actually didn't know that. I feel like biotin supplements are so widely advertised that it just made me think that, maybe we're all just lacking in it, but it's good to know that our bodies are supposed to be making this in our gut.
I know. I want like biotin's PR team. I feel like along, the journey of hair health,
Right.
somebody gave biotin this amazing PR agent, and it's been, in the media, it's been taught to our medical professionals, and yes, helpful, but I don't think hair specific, because it's just going to give more energy in general that can go anywhere in the body.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I know we're almost at time, but we do have one last question in the chat, which is, the earlier question was, what's, some of the key differences between Nutrafol and biotin and other perhaps daily vitamins and supplements. But this question asks, should people take Nutrafol along with their daily multivitamins or supplements, or is that too much? Is that too much of an overload?
Yeah, I love that question too. So thinking about kind of your goals, I think would be the first thing to answer that question. Nutrafol is going to have serving sizes, right, or dosages that are appropriate to support hair health. If you have, goals beyond that, right, say if you want to raise your vitamin D levels, or you want to get to a certain level of macronutrient, micronutrient, I think the best conversation to have around that would be with your doctor, right, looking at your blood work, seeing what your goals are nutritionally, vitamin wise. And then if you wanted to combine the two of them, there's a great website that the NIH puts out if you just Google NIH upper limit vitamins, you'll see there's like this database that basically shows you what the maximums are of every vitamin. The three things that do have maximums are selenium, iodine, and vitamin D. So when you're doing that side by side, right, looking at your multivitamin, looking at Nutrafol, those are like the three ones that can kind of have a maximum to them. So those are the ones to be aware of overall.
Yeah, that's actually really helpful because I feel like when it comes to daily supplements, people are never quite sure like how many are too many, how many are too few, but to actually know that there's a resource from the NIH which people can sort of just Google and look up and figure out what works best for them is really helpful information.
Yeah, I think too, looking at those goals I think are important, right?
Right.
Just okay, do I want to do something more than support my hair health? And then, what kind of level do I need to get to achieve
Mhm.
that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, those are all of the questions that came up in the Q&A. And again, just want to thank you so much, Melissa, for your time and answering some of my questions, answering some of the questions of our panelists. And with that, I'll kick it back to Priya to close us out.
Thank you, Anjana and Melissa, for that great conversation about hair health. Just want to let everyone know who's listening, as Melissa said, talk to your healthcare professionals, learn more about what options are available to you and the science behind them. Melissa gave some really great links that you can use to figure out, what are the right levels of vitamins, how to decide which type of product you want, and we will circulate those to all of you who have attended after the session, just so you can check those out and learn more. As with all issues with women's health, we just want to have dialogue and continue this process about learning. And I think we learned a lot about hair health and the different types of factors that influence it throughout our lives today. So, Anjana and Melissa, thank you again for being with us. Melissa, thank you for all that you're doing at Nutrafol to not just sell a product, but really to look at the data and the science behind it so that when women use it and when they trust your company to provide it, they know they are getting something that will help them in the way that they need help. So thank you again. Our next event is going to be in September. We are going to take August off. So I hope you all enjoy the summer and make it through this heat wave that we continue to have in our country. And we will see you soon. Thank you again and hope everyone has a great evening.